Welcome everyone to our second in our high school webinar series. Today we will be focused on leadership and service. We are so thrilled to have a guest speaker here with us today. And again, just a reminder, everyone feel free to utilize the chat. I will be moderating throughout this and we will be fielding questions. So the goals of today's webinar, we will be defining leadership, providing examples and asking you all to provide examples of good leaders in quotes because everyone has slight different definition. We want to identify the key qualities that make up a leader, a strong leader, and explore some aspects of service leadership. Obviously, a great aspect of leadership is service and providing service to others. Today, as I said, we do have a special guest on the webinar with us who will be presenting for a good chunk of the time. Marlon Kerner is the Director of Player Engagement and Alumni with the Buffalo Bills, who, as you all know, are great partners of ConnectLife. So welcome, Marlon. At this point in time, I will be turning the presentation over to you. I will advance the slides. Just let me know when you need them advanced.
Okay. Say the all the time when we mention our school names here at Ohio State, and played football here for 4 years, tore my ACL twice, ended up marrying a young lady here who I met when I was playing, and we have now been married for 20 years. We have 3 teenagers, one sophomore at UV, he's 19. My daughter is 17 and a senior at Lancaster High School. And then my youngest is 15 and a sophomore at Lancaster High School. So that is enough talking about me. If you probably thought about influence others to achieve a specific goal. Next slide, please. So when you think about that, you're like, all right, what does that really mean? Like, I can influence anybody. We all have the ability to influence people in our circle and around us. So any one of us can be a leader. You don't have to have an official title to become a leader. Really, to become a leader, there's 5 stages that you go through. And the first one we all do, we come in and we connect. We kind of get around people that we see. We figure out how we connect with them. We look at how we can motivate their behavior to be a certain way. We do it all the time. We can motivate our friends to do something. We connect. And then you kind of build relationships, right? Because that's the next phase, right? So once you get to know me, you're going to find out how we can build a relationship. We're going to find something in common. If we have common goals, the people we might want to hang around with, maybe because they're really smart or they might like. And then once you get to the trust phase, then people are kind of figuring out, how do you add value? How do you add value to my life? How do you add value to the people who I associate with, their lives? How do you do that? And then you get to the level of what we call level stage 5, which is influence. Then you can really cause influence because you've gone through this 5-step process. Next slide, please. So now, people, you kind of fall in 3 different types, which is I'll focus on the first 3. You fall under. So that's called positional influence. You have a title, you have the ability to do it because you were given a role. So people automatically look to you because you have the title or the position of someone influence. Reference influence, which is the next one, really is what I like to call earned influence. This is the one that most of us really fall into, one where people actually fall and follow us because of who we are, because we've been able to just be ourselves. They found a quality that they like about us. And then all where you've seen somebody who might, the valedictorian is going to be the expert influence, right? That person who is, you come in like, hey, I'm going to ask that person everything I know. Use your influence as being an expert. The other three, reward influence, is more of kind of something that a boss would kind of be able to do, like, hey, really good job on this test. You don't have to take the final. You don't have to take the midterm. So it's going to kind of give you the incentive to do something and influence your behavior, because that means you're going to study really hard to do something so that you can not take that final test. Coercive is one that we've seen over time. Dictators kind of use this. They kind of go and just, they take it. It's forceful. You can have negative consequences with this one. And so you kind of really, I don't like that one. But we have seen people come through and use use force to take something. And then informational is really, you're kind of like a subject matter knowledge. You're kind of that person who knows it all. Like, you're going to use information to kind of do that. So a doctor can kind of be somebody who has informational influence, because like Dr. Fauci, you're going to listen to him because he's going to give you a lot of information regarding COVID-19. So he would be somebody that has informational influence for you. Next slide, please. There's a change that happens. And so because of the change, leaders need to arise and step up. Or I'm already a leader and in a position, and I recognize that there's a change that needs to take place. So then I create and I lead the change. So I like to look at some of the traits. There's a lot of different leadership traits out there, but I wanted to give you something that you could remember. And so for me, leadership traits fall under what I spell out: change. It's really just being confident in your ability to deal with any problem that may arise. And do this. And I'm going to get the right people around me, and we're going to go and we're going to do this. So can-do leaders understand what their own role is going to be, their responsibilities, their assignments, and then they're going to go find the right people. And they're, most importantly about a can-do person, is they're positive. They don't see negatives, right? You may understand there's some challenges that may come up, but it's not going to be negative. You're always going to be positive. We can do it. You're going to be the rah-rah person that can do that. So that's the C in the change as far as leadership traits. Next slide, please. The next one for me, H, is hardworking, right? So you're always going to put in a lot of care and effort into your work, right? How many times have you seen somebody who is on the leader, but they have you do everything? Like, you're doing all the work and they're stepping back, just like, well, you do this, you do that. Well, good leaders understand that there's going to be some things that they have to do. You have to go in and put in some work as well. You have to set the example, because if you don't set the example, then you got people like, well, okay, well, if he's in there and I've done everything right, I've then I will be willing to do the same thing for you. So sometimes if it's a big mess, we go in there and we clean up together. That's the type of leadership that you want, somebody who is going to put in the same amount of work and more, just have to, as a leader, take accountability and responsibility for the outcomes of what's going to happen, right? So if you ask somebody to do something and you're very vague about it, we don't point fingers as leaders. Leaders are the ones we accept all responsibility. So if somebody makes a mistake, then you say, hey, you know what? It was my fault, my mistake. I wasn't clear enough in what I conveyed to them, so they were unsure. True leaders take accountability for their actions and responsibilities of the people that they it starts with honesty. That's, I mean, if you're honest with yourself, you can kind of look back and say, hey, okay, and tell people it's okay to ask a lot of questions. If you don't know, come back, right? You seek input from others. Input, you have a different viewpoint and more responsible. You don't avoid responsibilities, right? That's the main thing, right? How many times have you said, hey, not my fault, right? Hey, not my fault, not my fault. Leaders don't avoid responsibility. Leaders take responsibility. So if there's a mistake made, it's my mistake. Hey, if something was good, different. You can kind of put it in and put in a lot of different acronyms for traits that you want. But for me, nurturing, especially in my role, it's helping someone by developing or encouraging, right? Because that's the main thing. Like in my role as director of player engagement, I spend a lot of time with a lot of players. So I'm not a coach, so I don't get to say you did this wrong. So my job is really help them figure out a different viewpoint of how to see things. So if they get some negative feedback, amazing. I'm kind of like a different type of coach where I am, just because I help guys see things that maybe the coach may not have saw, right? So I go back and I look at maybe there was something going on in their home life that maybe they didn't want to let their coach know. So then I can be kind of that conduit for them to kind of speak in their behalf and advocate for them and get the coach to see like, hey, this is what's going on. So we help nurture guys. And so that's where servant leaders are ones that nurture. They're the ones that help people figure out where. This is one of the most important things as a leader, genuine. You have to be who you are, right? So genuine as a definition is just being someone or something that you appear to be. You're honest, you're sincere. How many times have you had a leader and you like, oh, I thought he was this, and then it turns out they were something different, right? They weren't genuine. And then when you look at it, it's hard for them to come back and ask you to do something because you're like, I don't know what their motives are. And so whenever you're So as a young person and who you are, just be as a young person now, just be who you are. Like you don't have to be somebody that you're not. You don't have to have all the answers. Great leaders understand that they don't have all the answers, and it's okay to say I don't know, but I will find that for you, and I'll get back to you in a timely manner. So when you're genuine, people, and then this is the main thing. All about the energy. Leaders are energetic in what they do. There's an enthusiasm, and you can see it, and so it rubs off on everyone else. It makes people want to be like, I want to be like. Kind of like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, and kind of like, yeah. Then your whole team is their energy gonna be like, yeah, as well. So you want to make sure that you provide the right energy and understand. Look at the situations, right? If it's something where we're kind of So I'd like to ask this question: how will you lead? And again, here's an acronym because I think it's something that you can remember. And how will you lead change in your life and in your community, right? Because as you noticed, it spells out change, right? And so that is the main thing. Stop for a second and see if anybody has any questions so far before we go to the next slide.
Does anyone have any questions for Marlon at this point in time? Feel free to unmute yourself if you do, or again, type in the chat. We will have time for questions at the end as well.
Okay, then we can go to the next slide.
So this is something that we want to, now, thanks Marlon for kind of giving us, a great picture, a great framework of the traits of leaders. So this is our great time for audience participation. And remember, I said that we will have some prizes at the end too. So listening to what Marlon had to say and sharing some of his experiences, looking for what you all think, what would be here on our Family Feud leaderboard as far as the top characteristics and traits of leaders. Don't everyone jump in at once. Energy.
Mine would be energy. This is Krista. Energy.
Hi, Krista.
Hi.
Let's see. Oh, we've got integrity, honesty. I see someone on the chat. Positivity. Great, Leon. Hard worker, genuine. There we go. Now everyone's commenting. Let's see. Passion. Creative. Accountability, which we touched on. Inspires others. Resiliency. I think that's really important too. Being able to carry on even when things get tough and lead your team. Good communicator. Chloe says a can-do attitude. Genuine. Definitely, Chloe. And empathy. Being able to understand and relate and support others. So, as we spoke about, a really important thing with leadership is to serve. Communication is definitely key. Agree. Integrity. Having a heart to serve, a call to lead, and a courage to engage is really service leadership. And a lot of the things that Marlon was talking about are really, your job as a leader is not just to pave the way, but it's really to serve others, serve those who are part of your team, your colleagues, your external customers, and your internal customers. These are leaders who help to identify problems in their communities, in their workplace, in their school, and help others to solve them through service. I do have a short video as well, too, that I think really exemplifies this aspect of service and leadership that we were talking about. Please type in the chat if you cannot hear, but I believe I fixed the sound problem that we had. And this is just a really brief video. So I think that's a really great illustration, and again, kind of ties in with some of the things that Marlon was saying. That leadership and service to others. You never know how big of an impact you're going to have, and just sometimes it's the smallest things that can make the biggest impact. So I would like to open up the chat, and again, here's our time for audience participation, which I know everyone loves. COVID-19 has impacted our community, our county, our state, your schools, your city. It's impacted everything. Where do you see that there's unmet needs in your community? Where might there be an opportunity for you to serve? Feel free to go into the chat. Are there things that you can do with fellow classmates, maybe fellow teachers? Are there neighbors that maybe need some help with things? And again, it can be even the smallest thing. Remember the shoes. For those of you who've been involved with ConnectLife for a while, you know that there's always opportunities to serve. And I wanted to talk a little bit, and I'll invite any of my colleagues who are on the call to join to talk about opportunities to serve. Again, because the world is so shut down, and even more so now, there are very few things that we could do to give back. You can donate blood. You could hold a blood drive or adopt a day at one of our sites. Create thank you cards, messages for people who are blood donors, who are heroes who roll up their sleeves. You could even create cards for patients who are in the hospital, maybe without family members who are needing blood products. As well as throughout December, I wanted to make sure you all know ConnectLife is partnering with Feed More and the YMCA to help to give back to the community. Feed More provides over 51,000 meals to people on a monthly basis, and the YMCA has helped to provide childcare and resources such as even Wi-Fi to students who need to learn from home. So we are partnering with those organizations throughout the month of December that you may be able to connect with and give back to. And I see there's some folks typing it on the chat too. So Chloe, the unmet needs in the community are seen in many places throughout the pandemic. Organize things in food pantries, help a neighbor out in need, and be an ear or a hand for someone who's in need. That's a great point, Chloe. So many things throughout the pandemic have been really isolating. So sometimes just making that phone call, going in and knocking on the door and waving to your neighbor through the window is a great opportunity. Lori is continuing to spread the word on the need. Krista recognizes reaching out to others. Just show them you're thinking of them. A quick phone call goes a long way. I think that's a great thing. And I'll reference, we were talking with our partners at Feed More because they deliver meals to people who are homebound, as well as provide food for the food pantries. And they were saying that's one of the greatest things that they've seen. Folks that used to, that continue to deliver food to people who are homebound used to spend some time and have some fellowship with them. And now that everything's touchless and contactless, obviously for health, people don't have that. So reaching out, making that phone call to others is a great thing to do. Michelle, being in a small rural community, there may be people during the holidays that need food, clothing, some of those basic things. Alexa, I agree. Checking in on your elderly neighbors or those that live alone. So sometimes a simple thing of just reaching out and thanking people. Marlon, is there anything that you all as an organization are doing to give back to the community? Obviously players and your top management there are very involved in the community. So can you share some of the things that you all are doing?
Yes, we have a social justice committee that actually saw that with school being the way it was going to be with COVID-19 and some school districts going virtually, not having enough Wi-Fi sections and connections everywhere, our players all donated money together from week one and was able to raise $500,000 to donate to Buffalo Public Schools. Donate and do things. So we've done a lot of different things to help really help our community and still looking to do a lot more things in the community as well. So we've got players doing some Thanksgiving drives next week and feeding 300. I have a player doing 3 locations, giving away 100 meals at each location. I have another player doing another Thanksgiving drive next week. He's going to feed 500 families himself as well. So our players are really understanding that this time of year, people are going to need some assistance, and they're doing all that they can.
That's wonderful. And, a lot of folks on this call are either our teacher ambassadors in our schools who are partners and a lot of students themselves. So, what would you say to a young person at this point in time who's looking to make an impact in their community or who doesn't know how they can be a leader? What kind of advice would you give?
About and start there. So if you have a heart to serve somebody, just volunteer a day at a soup kitchen or go somewhere and just do something that you like. Go out in the community, clean up a park, like they said, or even start with your own family. Just maybe there's some relatives that you haven't spoken to in a while, and it just, hey, quick little shoot. Hey, I'm gonna shoot you a text. Hey, do you have time to FaceTime? Right? Because with COVID, it's changed the way we interact with people. So you don't get to go and visit people and see people. So sometimes a quick little FaceTime video or a Zoom call just to pop on and say, hey, I was thinking about you. Just want to see how you're doing. What's going on? I want to spend 5 or 10 minutes talking to you. Really does go a long way with somebody that maybe you haven't seen or spoken to in a long time. And then outside of that, really just start thinking, get with your friends and say, hey, what do you like to do? Hey, is there a need that you're noticing that I'm not noticing that maybe we can come together and do something? With social media, you can do so many things. You can get the call out and say, hey, I'm starting a mitten drive. And if there's anybody that want to help us, you can send mittens to this address. And you'd be surprised how many people would just jump in and say, hey, that's a great idea. Let me go ahead and help and contribute and do something. And you might get inundated with just a lot of mittens and gloves just by doing something as simple as that. So don't think that you're and see from step to step and see that process and really make a big impact and really have a bigger impact on yourself and not just your community.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Great advice. So I just want to remind everyone that our next webinar will be on December 16th. It will be focused on transplantation and donation, and we are actually going to be involving some of our folks from our clinical services and our medical team. So I really recommend, if you are someone who is interested in potentially going into the medical field in some way, shape, or form, for teachers on the call, this is really relevant for any anatomy and physiology, biology students, any folks who go to health occupations or the EMS classes at BOCES. It will really be a great opportunity to gain some of that clinical insight and information. And we did receive some feedback from our advisors that it would be better to move up to 2 p.m. To be within the school window. So we will be making that change, and the next webinar will be at 2 p.m. So I really want to thank everyone for your participation today, for all the types in the chat, typing in the chat. And Marlon, we really just want to thank you for your time, for your words of inspiration, and really sharing some great leadership qualities with our students and our teachers on the call today. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and everyone have a wonderful day. Stay safe, wash your hands, and wear masks, and we'll see you soon.